How's it going, gentlemen? This is your main man, Scott. And before we get started today, I want to let you in on 3 completely cool things that are going on right now. The first is from my friends over at Keyport. There's a giveaway going on right now, sponsored by both them and this podcast, where they're giving away quantity 2 of their excellent Pivot bundles, as well as 2 of their equally excellent Anywhere Tools bundles. So listen, guys, this is all about EDC. That stands for Everyday Carry. And what we're talking about here is the 21st century development of having an entire multi-tool, multitasking device in your pocket instead of your grandfather's simple old school pocket knife. So you definitely want to get on this giveaway from my friends at Keyport. Go to mountaintoppodcast.com/giveaway and go ahead and enter. And when you tweet it, you'll be entered twice. Another thing that's going on is my friend Lucas Rui at Hero Soap Company has what's called the Hero Bundle, and you'll be able to find out more about what that includes when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Hero Soap. Now, why should you care about Hero Soap? Well, because first of all, they're giving away a portion of all of their proceeds back to veterans, and that's near and dear to the heart of many of you listening. But let's talk about the product itself. First of all, I'm on record telling you that Hero Soap is like new car smell for dudes. It's that powerful. It's that masculine. But here's the killer app. Listen, guys, in your house or your apartment, if you want women to come over and feel free to say, oh, get naked with you and take a shower with you, here's a little secret about how to make that happen. Let's say you go out and do something active with a woman and you end up back at your place to maybe make dinner together. Well, you're going to need to clean up. And when you suggest to her that you take a shower together, you can make that all right by saying, hey, I have this really terrific soap that smells amazing. You're going to love it. And she'll treat that as an excuse to say, hey, yeah, let's go take a shower and see what the soap is all about. Plus, guys, using Hero Soap means you're getting rid of those nasty chemicals and the parabens in your life that are estrogenizing you, and it's just no darn good for you to clean up using commercial chemical stuff. So Hero Soap not only makes you look great when you go out with women, it makes you extra clean, and it does so while preserving your testosterone levels. Finally, I want to give you an update from the guys over at Origin Maine. All right, here it is. I got my jeans in the mail, and let me tell you something. Emily tells me I look sexier in these jeans than in anything else in my closet. What's really amazing about these jeans is they're stretchy and they're roomy, but they kind of hug you at the same time. So you look excellent in them. They have a nice slimming effect, and they're also stylish without being douchey stylish. You don't look like you're trying too hard. So these jeans are masculine, they're stylish enough to go out to dinner with, and they're flexible enough and kind of stretchy enough that you can get the job done in them and they won't bind you up. You could probably even go running in them. They're truly the most amazing jeans I've ever worn in my entire life. And you can get a pair by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/origin and use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10. As a matter of fact, you can use the same coupon code MOUNTAIN10 whether you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Hero Soap, mountaintoppodcast.com/Keyport, or mountaintoppodcast.com/origin. And now, on to this week's show with a new friend of mine named GS Youngblood, who's written an excellent book on a powerful topic that I'm sure you guys are going to resonate with.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
All right, gentlemen, this is your main man, Scott McKay, coming at you again with another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Scott McKay, Real Scott McKay on Instagram, Scott McKay on YouTube. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com. And I invite you to go ahead and get on board with the rest of the Big Four men in the Facebook group, which is Mountain Top Summit. With me today for what promises to be an excellent conversation with a really hot topic is a new friend of mine. His name is GS Youngblood, and he is the author of a book called The Masculine in Relationship, a blueprint for inspiring the trust, lust, and devotion of a strong woman. And today we're going to talk about masculinity from the heart, which is something a lot of guys don't ever really get around to talking about. Some guys don't even want to admit it's something that needs to be talked about, but it indeed is. And this is the time, the place, and the show, and the guest to do it. So without anything further, GS, welcome, man.
Thanks, Scott. Great to be here.
Yeah, likewise, bud. You got this book called The Masculine in Relationship with an auspicious subtitle that involves inspiring trust, lust, and devotion of a strong woman. And a lot of times, you know, we don't think of the term lust as being something that's tied to a long-term relationship, do we?
Yeah.
But yet there it is in plain day. You said it in your out loud voice, and now we're going to address it. How does a guy enter into a relationship with a woman that's all about trust, devotion, and lust? I think that's a great place to start when we're talking about masculinity from the heart, because it seems like it's directly relevant, huh?
Yeah, absolutely is. Well, the book itself comes out a lot of personal experience, being in relationship, long-term relationship with two very strong women. And what I found was that, you know, trust and lust, they really go they're two halves of the same coin, because when trust and safety start to erode in the relationship, when she trusts you less, that's when her heart closes to you. And more importantly, for a lot of guys, I mean, let's just face it, that's when she closes her body to you. And so, you know, my motivation to write this came out of my marriage, which ended 10 years ago, and thinking there has got to be a better way, because by the end of that relationship, she had closed her body to me. She had closed her heart to me. And that's what the book is really about. And what I've done is I've structured it around a blueprint. And it's a blueprint for men to really develop their masculine core. And it's a way to manifest their masculinity, even with a woman who's strong. Because, you know, Scott, that's the challenge these days. This isn't the 1950s. Most of the women that a lot of us are involved with, they're strong women, and they're not going to settle for less. And so this is a blueprint that, you know, it takes into account their needs. It takes into account the fact that you're honoring them, but it is a masculine core that you can bring your personal power to. And that was really the basis of the book when I wrote it.
I think a lot of guys overlook the importance of finding a strong woman, because on the surface, it sounds kind of like an oxymoron. The guy's thinking, I'm supposed to be the strong one here, and she's supposed to be submissive and, you know, kind of think I'm a hero. But see, it's not mutually exclusive that we're a strong man and she's a strong woman. I remember someone very wise in his 60s gave a 20-something version of me years ago some very good advice, which was marry a strong woman, which I summarily ignored the first time around, but I took to heart the second time around. And it's not that my wife Emily can bench press 400 pounds like a beast. It's that she has a constitution within her that is prepared for what life sends towards you. You know, life is a series of small emergencies. She's not a blamer. She's not easily offended. She's not a weakling when it comes to standing up for herself or getting things done. She happened to be very germophobic when I met her, but a couple trips to the Serengeti and back and other places in the world, you know, caused her to get over herself a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, you know, she's willing to go and play in the dirt and scuff her knees up a little bit. And we're raising our kids, boys and girls, to be like that. So I think a lot of times guys get crossed up thinking strength inherently is a masculine trait, when really it's not gender specific at all, is it?
It's not, but here's the challenge. You know, we are drawn to strong women sometimes. I know I have been. It sounds like you are as well. They're doing good things in the world. They've got a groundedness about them that can be attractive. But here's the problem, is we also like when our woman can go into that feminine energy as well. You know, the feminine energy that's going to be the softness. It's going to be the smile. It's going to be that inner glow. It's going to be her following her lead. And so the challenge is that We get attracted to a woman that's doing great things in the world because she's got a strong masculine energy within her, because we all have both. But if that woman can't go into her feminine energy, if she doesn't trust you enough to relax into her feminine energy and relax into your lead, then you're missing some of the fun parts that, for me at least, and I know for a lot of men, you're missing some of those fun parts, those great feminine energies that are within a woman. And that's really what this book is about. It's like, how can the man be a certain way in the world and, respect her ability to get shit done in the world, but also is that she's not going to tolerate a man who's not leading, who's not providing structure in the relationship, who's not grounded. And that's really what this blueprint is for. It's a way that a man can develop his masculine core. And I broke it up into what I hope to be a very easy to understand blueprint that's got 3 parts. And these 3 parts are my model, what I'm putting out into the world, my model for what masculine looks like. And so the first element is respond versus react. And this is the quality of a man who is grounded. He's got a stillness about him, and he operates out of choice with the world rather than just reacting to all the stimuli of the world. Second element, provides structure. This is the quality of a man who is decisive, provides clarity in the relationship and clarity for her about where he stands and what the couple is going to do. And then finally, probably the most overlooked part, which is where we'll spend a lot of our time today, Scott, is create safety. So this is the quality of a man that can really hold space for the chaos of a woman's emotions. He can really feel her instead of just receive her cognitively. And that's where being in your heart really comes into play. And I think one of the things I've learned over the last 10 years of men's work that I've been doing, and also real relationship, is if she's not feeling safe, whether that's physical safety, financial safety, or most importantly, emotional safety, she's not going to open to you. She's not going to open her heart. She's not going to open her body. She's not going to be devoted to you. And that's where living from your heart comes from.
Yeah. One of the things I've said for over a decade now is what women need to be protected from the most in many, many cases is the guy they're with. Meanwhile, lots of guys are trying to be this hero, this guy who fights off all the thugs and some kind of gorilla who's going to be, a strong physical force.
Right.
And meanwhile, he's making her feel stupid. He's driving like a maniac. He's coming home drunk and breaking stuff. She doesn't know when to duck because of his emotional outbursts and his temper tantrums or whatever. And all of that plays into making her feel safe. Mm-hmm. Now, even if you're not an imposing physical presence, you can actually do a better job at making a woman feel safe than a guy who is physically by virtue of where you're leading in terms of her emotional space, all those spaces you mentioned that you hold space for. There's a lot of dimension to that guys don't ever really recognize often until it's too late. Mm-hmm. And one thing I do want to address, though, you referred to a woman who's strong as being in her masculine, whereas the feminine would be, in your vernacular, and I would agree with this, by the way, more of a softness, more of an artistic, fun, playful energy. I'm not sure that emotional fortitude, having the ability to withstand assaults on our self-esteem, how we choose to portray ourselves as a victim versus a survivor. I'm still not sure that's gender specific. So I'd like for you to elaborate your position on that.
Actually, Scott, I think that we're more in alignment than it may seem at first blush.
I suspected that.
Yeah. What I'm referring to is just masculine energy as her ability to be out in the world getting things done. So it's the VP at a corporation, where she's in charge, she's setting direction for those under her. And then she comes home, and it's a question whether she wants to be in her masculine or in her feminine energy, and then what the man can do about that to evoke her into her feminine energy if that's what they both want.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by the idea that you mentioned before about a man being in his heart mattering most when it comes to making a woman feel safe. So why don't we go ahead and throw on the table here a definition to consider when talking about coming from the heart or being in his heart.
Yeah. And I think the best way to do it is just simply give you an example of a conversation that probably every man and woman have had, where she's fired up about something and she says, "You don't care about me. You're never there for me." And he has two choices at that point. He can go into defending and explaining, which is, "What are you talking about? I'm never there for you. I work all day. I bring home the paycheck. I listened to your story, dot, 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 dot. He's in a very reactive mode. He's thinking about what she said. He's using his cognitive mind to receive what she said. And the truth is that when the feminine is fired up, they say all kinds of shit that may or may not be even remotely close to the truth, or it might. The problem is if a man stays in his cognitive mind and he responds from that cognitive place, he's listening to her words literally and he's trying to respond to them and refute the ones that seem a little crazy. He's just twisting himself in knots. She's not going to trust him. That fight's not going to end, and they'll probably go to sleep angry with each other, and some sediment between the two of them has been built up. So that's really a man in his cognitive mind. Now let's contrast that with a man who hears that same conversation from his woman. You're never there for me. And he sits back, and instead of choosing to respond cognitively, he pauses for a second. He knows that she's upset. He knows that this is the woman that he loves. And he chooses to actually feel that in the moment and be like, wow, you know what? My baby's hurting. And then instead of actually responding to the words she said, he's going to feel into his own heart, and then he's going to feel into hers and realize that she's hurting. And he's going to say, oh, baby, I don't know what's going on, but I can see that you're really hurting. I'm here for you.
Yeah. What came to mind as you're talking about all that, this idea of a man reacting instead of proacting or responding, as you would call it, reminds me of some of the crazy things, or things that sound crazy to men, that women say they want from us. Famously around here, we talk about the idea of women saying that they want a man who listens. And a lot of guys in our masculine lizard brains think to ourselves, hey, you know what? That means she wants me to obey her and do her bidding for her. But that's not what she meant. She meant, how can you possibly make decisions and lead in my best interest if you don't know my hopes and fears and wants and needs and my dreams and et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of times women are critical of men who try to fix everything, when in reality, they just want to vent and be heard. And it sounds like that's the positive thumbs up version of the conversation you were trying to convey there, whereas the guy says, hey, I know you're hurting, baby. Let me just listen. Let me just hold space for you, as they like to say.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that came to mind is how women talk about wanting a man who's emotionally available. And to me, that seems like the overarching surround for this entire conversation is figuring out what the hell women mean by that, if we're talking about masculinity from the heart. Because women won't use that vernacular. They won't say, I want a man who is heartfelt in his masculinity or is masculine from the heart. They'll use the trite, banal cliche that they've heard for the last 30 years, which is emotional availability. And boy, does that vex the living tofu out of men everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we men, we sometimes think that means they want us to be a big wimp. And that's not what they're talking about. See, the truth is that women communicate at an emotional level. It's at the level of feeling, whereas we men, we communicate at the cognitive level. It's about facts and details and resolution of things. And being in your heart is really about existing at that other level. It's about listening at that other level. One of the things I write in the book is one of the most powerful things you can do with your woman is hear the pain, not the blame. So my experience is that when women I've been with have been fired up, like they're expressing their displeasure, but they're also mixing in some toxic blame in there as opposed to just expressing how they feel. And it's very easy to get hooked on that. And you can hear yourself getting blamed, and that's what you respond to. When really what these women are asking for when they're talking about emotional availability is just they want you to hear their pain, because really a woman that's fired up is in her pain. And so really, to me, the model of a strong man is he can sit back, he's grounded, he can sidestep all the toxicity that might get interlaced in her expression, and he can hear the pain behind it. And guess what, men? If you're the guy that can do that for her, you are uniquely attractive to her. Uniquely attractive.
Now, you're saying that strong women can have those moments and still be strong women, correct?
When you say those moments, what do you mean, Scott?
Where they're blaming you and they're flying off the deep end, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can speak from experience. 2 long-term relationships, 2 very strong women, and boy, they can hurl those fireballs. They definitely can. And they're smart, so they really know how to push your buttons with it as well. So the stronger the woman, the more capable the woman in the world, the more grounded you're going to have to be, the more skillful to really see past that fireball and see the pain behind it.
I'm sensing the need to do a little more level setting on your usage of the phrase strong woman versus what I'm implying. Because you're talking about a woman who's career-minded, who's inner masculine, and who may be very alpha. Is that what you're talking about?
It's not necessarily tied to career. I mean, you can have a housewife who's a very strong woman, but
yes,
she's got a sense of herself. She's not going to take your shit. She's not going to settle for your lack of depth. So it's really more about that than necessarily a career woman, although that can be associated with it.
Because my sense of a strong woman is a woman who's not a victim, a woman who doesn't shame others. God forbid a woman who's easily offended. I mean, oh, God, they're the worst. Women who just are looking for a reason to stick it to you. A woman who's decided that all men are jerks and they're terrible because she's had, a couple run-ins with a wrong guy here and there. But instead of saying, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to let those bad guys live rent-free in my head. I'm still going to have an open heart. I'm going to remain emotionally available as a woman. She starts turning on men and looking for reasons to lash out. My idea of a strong woman is a woman who's emotionally together, who makes sense, who's reasonable, and isn't looking for someone to be the scapegoat, and instead is taking charge of her own life and takes responsibility. And I think when two people get together who are optimistic and generous and strong in the regard that I just described, I think, that's an excellent foundation for a really strong relationship between the two of them. There's that word strong again, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's, in any archetype, there's the healthy version and then there's the shadow version. And you're describing the healthy version, right? And then there's the shadow version of a strong woman, which is going to be more blaming. She's going to be responding out of her wounds. Either way, I think the axis is strong woman is somebody that stands up for themselves. They don't take shit. They expect a lot out of you as a man. And then there's the healthy and unhealthy versions of that. And then there's the more docile woman, and there's probably healthy and unhealthy versions of that. So I think that's
Agreed.
How I reconcile what you're saying with what I'm saying.
Yeah. One of the things you talk about in your book, which really resonated with me, because I think you're the only guy I've ever heard or read before who successfully conveyed this same concept, is the idea of what causes women to nag the man in their life. Mm-hmm. And it's all about the man not living up to his masculine potential, and the woman feels like she's got to take up that masculine mantle and do the providing and protecting and presiding around here. And that disgust comes out in the form of complaining and nagging to the guy out of pure frustration. And a lot of guys will react to that. There's that word again, by saying, man, what a bitch. I'm just going to shut her off, and I'm going to go back into my shell, and I'm going to hide from her even more. And what a lot of guys don't realize is that the very sexual attraction that sparks this relationship is at stake there. Mm-hmm. And you alluded to that in the beginning about how keeping a woman safe and being the masculine in this relationship is what keeps her horny for you for years.
Absolutely. I love how you put it. Great synopsis. Yeah, there's a lot of men who are blaming it on her. She's gotten frigid. She's just changed. She's become a bitch. I don't know what's wrong with her. And then, as you said, they just retreat back into their football and their beer and whatever other pursuits they have to numb out. And what they don't realize is that, I think, in a high percentage of cases, she acts like that because she doesn't trust you. And she doesn't think she can depend on you. And you haven't stepped up and set a lead. And those are the exact symptoms that happen when you have that kind of dynamic. She gets irritable. She gets bitchy. She starts telling you what to do. Guess what? Because you aren't injecting a lead into the relationship. So now she's going to create her own lead and you need to follow it. So the thing I tell guys as a resolution to what you and I both described is stop waiting for her. When you change, she'll change.
That's called leadership, which is masculine.
Yeah, instead of saying, waiting for her to stop being bitchy, waiting for her to feel sexual, waiting for her to change, you say, no, what can I do to actually lead us out of that? And that's masculine leadership right there, as you just said. What can I do to lead us out? And that's what the book is all about. It's like, hey, guys, here's what you can do. And I go into a lot of different scenarios that show guys how they can bring leadership to a relationship.
I just thought of something perhaps even scarier. Arguably even scarier than the man who's getting nagged by his wife nonstop and then retreats into his man cave just to ignore her. What if a man marries that timid, docile wife, the compliant woman who will do anything for him? And he sees that she's so low maintenance, that he can successfully ignore her
Mm-hmm.
and kind of retreat into a false sense of security, thinking, oh, she's okay. She's fine with me. Just because she's not complaining. She still has that smile on her face.
Yeah.
And yet the result is the same. He retreats. He doesn't man up. He goes to his man cave. He does whatever the hell he wants selfishly rather than providing and protecting and presiding over that family unit. And that's still a very toxic situation. The one example that comes to mind is the old show All in the Family with Archie Bunker and Edith. And she was always so long suffering and would just be so compliant with Archie.
Yeah.
And he was very much this boorish guy who ignored her and went about his selfish business thinking everything was okay. And of course that set up the character foil relationship between him and the meathead, you know, he and Archie's daughter had a very different relationship. And of course, when you juxtapose those different personalities, hilarity ensues. And of course, that's the secret to comedy. But that's the first example I thought of from Hollywood.
Yeah. And in that situation, one of two very horrible things happens. One is the poor woman lives a life unfulfilled because she has no emotional connection with her partner and feels like an animal in a cage. The other is that she starts to get a sense about herself and she starts dreaming of another man who will provide her that emotional connection. And maybe she does or doesn't take action on that. But her going a lifetime without emotional connection is not fair to her, and most women won't tolerate it. Most women won't tolerate it. That's like asking the men, hey, we're going to get married, but I'm not going to have sex with you. And I need you to tolerate that. It just doesn't work. So, you know, guys, be careful. If you are not providing that emotional connection, she's thinking about somebody who will, whether it's the inner imagination or the real world.
I would argue that's not gender specific. I think there are strong women out there who get married to a man they can bully, and then the reverse happens. And that's really screwed up. I mean, we need not really delve into it. I just want to let the light of day shine on that idea. If it strikes some fear into the hearts of certain guys who are listening, so be it. But yeah, that definitely exists because nowadays we live in a gender bent culture. And, you know, when people enter into relationships where they believe that masculinity and femininity are non-factors, it can easily happen to us as men in that relationship. It's not necessarily a one-way street, but either way,
I agree with that.
It's broken and it's messed up.
Yeah. We've been talking about, hey, you need to provide this emotional connection for your woman. This is part of creating safety for her, emotional safety for her. And I wanted to sort of contrast that with sort of the alpha model, because I think a lot of men, they get confused. They're just like, hey, being alpha is about, really setting the direction of everything.
Being a controller, being dominating in a bad way.
Yeah. So that what they're bringing is a lot of the second element of my blueprint, which is provide structure, which is great. I mean, it really is, because most men let me rephrase that. A lot of men are nice guys who don't provide any direction. So thank God for the alphas, so they bring some direction. The problem is some of these alphas, they're one-dimensional. So that's all they are. And they might be, big, strong, rich, good-looking, and aggressive men in the world. And that's great for a while, but a woman's going to get tired of that. And so the way to be a complete masculine, if you ask me, is marry alpha with this emotional capability. That's where you get the combination of two. Because if you're one or the other, you're either domineering or you're a doormat, nice guy. But I have consistently heard women tell me the thing that makes a man uniquely attractive is when there's a man that has both these, what I call dark and light energies. And it's the mix of the two where you can provide really strong direction in the relationship and provide emotional safety for the woman. That's where they get hooked. That's where you get as the book says, trust, lust, and devotion. You get a woman who's devoted to you when you can bring both strong direction / dark energies and strong heart and creation of safety. That's the lighter energies.
I'm not sure I would term leadership and direction as darker energy if a woman wants you to provide that. I mean, I've dated women who have very strong roles in their careers and who have very alpha personalities in their own right. And they would be disgusted if I put them in the position of deciding what we're going to do next or how we're going to handle a crisis. It just completely destroys sexual attraction. Because see, this isn't a social thing. This is a sexual thing. This is how women physically get horny for us, is by seeing those examples of masculinity as they define it in action. The dark side to me is when we're threatening them with physical violence if they don't do what we say, or we're being manipulative in our selfishness at their expense. if we're lying to them, if we're coming home and getting violent, it brings us to this idea of, is all emotion necessarily good coming from a guy? Because you see, I would argue that it's not exactly true that women are the emotional ones and men are the logical ones. I mean, if you're an NFL fan and your quarterback fumbles and the other team recovers, you're going to be very emotional about that, especially if it's a big game. You know, so men can be very emotional. And unfortunately, what happens is when guys have been told to hide their emotions, to bury their emotions, all these, you know, sort of kind of true things that the toxic masculinity crowd likes to drop a hammer on because they want to take advantage of the situation and really hit us where it hurts.
Right.
You know, when guys haven't been taught how to manage their emotions correctly, that's when they regress into very childish temper tantrums. And, you know, they have a hard time controlling their anger. And that's emotional, but that's not something women would find attractive when we're out of control. So there's this element here, I'm sure you would agree, where when a man is in his heart, that needs to come from a place of mature, wise control over those emotions so that the woman doesn't have to concern herself as to whether those emotions are in control or not.
The word that comes up for me is consciousness. Am I conscious of my emotions till I brought them on the forefront? I see them and then I let them out. And as you said, men have emotions. They get fired up when their team fumbles the ball. But women want us to bring that emotional expression into the relational space. You know, football is not relational. Football is football. Women want us to bring it into the relational space, to have them very conscious and be like, baby, I'm fucking pissed right now. You know, where instead of blowing up with some of the negative behaviors that I think you described, you can actually be fully angry and be like, I'm fucking pissed. I cannot believe that you did that. And I'm really upset right now. You know, that's me being conscious about my anger. I'm not flying off the handle. I'm not making her feel unsafe, but I am telling her in no uncertain terms that I'm pissed. So that's bringing those emotions to the forefront and being very conscious about them. And I agree with you. That's what women want. That's what they want. They don't want them leaking out unconsciously. That's where it gets really unhealthy.
You know, my little rule around the house, what I've really cultivated within myself is an idea that if I raise my voice, you're going to damn skippy know I mean it. I don't go around just yelling and screaming and ranting. If my voice comes to a point where the decibel level has gone up, y'all need to stop, look at me like deer in the headlights, and we're going to do what happens next. Otherwise, if that's cheapened around the house and it's not something that can happen in a safe space also, I mean, make no mistake, I don't ever threaten those I love. But when there's something that needs to be heard and they're not quite in the mood to hear it, I know how to gain control back over this household and preside. Right. And my wife loves that about me.
Yeah, I love that. And here's what I would add to that is, for me, the model of the best way to do exactly what you just said is when you marry your intensity and intent with love. So it may not be these exact words, but this is the underlying subtext. Baby, I love you, but I need you to listen to me right now, you know, and it's like you can feel your love even while you're putting the hammer down. It's like tough love with your kids.
Yeah.
When you've got to do heavy-handed discipline, but you still love the fuck out of your kids and you want what's best for them. And there's going to be some discipline happening right now because I'm not happy. And so it's that marrying your anger, your healthy anger and your intensity with love at the same time. That's an authoritative man in his heart. And I think that's what you're talking about, you manifesting in your family life.
The boundary line is very, very simple in this case.
Yeah.
Am I acting in their best interest?
Yeah, I like that.
Even in my indignation. Yeah. Or am I responding in anger? Am I calling names? Am I insulting? Am I not showing love?
Yeah.
Am I breaching trust somewhere? That's the boundary line.
Exactly. Am I just acting out of my unconscious emotions here, everything you just said? Or, I love that, in their best interest. Yeah. That's really the core of what we're talking about here. I think we just hit it, Scott. Cool. That's the kind of man, you know, the powerful man in his heart.
Well, before we wrap this up, we had better touch upon the topic of tears. Men crying. Because you can't talk about masculinity from the heart and us being emotional rather than being these, you know, these reptilian brained, non-feeling robots. okay, without discussing that topic. There are tough guys who cry. And, there are women who love emo men and poetic, artistic kind of guys who can be masculine in the way women define it, but still shed a tear here. A lot of guys I know, they're frustrated with themselves, on the other hand, because they can go to a funeral for someone they love or care about, and the tears just never flow. And it's like, well, am I broken? Is there a certain personality type at play here? Is there a certain mix of traits that cause a man to be more comfortable with shedding a tear when the time is right? Or is it really something that's a habit we can cultivate? Because I'll tell you something. I can go to a movie and the waterworks will start.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the first 12 minutes of Up gets me every time because I love my wife like that. If you guys have never seen that movie before, we've talked about it a couple times on the show lately. And basically the first 80 years of this guy's life, which involves true love to his devoted childhood sweetheart, who ends up dying of cancer like a minute and a half later. The whole 80 years of his life passes by in this incredibly heartfelt, animated sequence that just shows somebody at Pixar understands how a man and a woman can truly cherish and treasure each other for an entire lifetime. And it's one of those things that you can't help but feel deep in your heart. But I've been to funerals. I've been places where everybody else is crying and I'm stone-faced. And I've never understood that about myself. So I think a lot of guys aren't really in touch with what would bring about tears in their life. And maybe that's some of our upbringing. Maybe that's how we've been taught to man up. Maybe it's something else. But I'd love for you to comment on that before we close the show.
Yeah, I obviously can't comment on everybody's situation because, as you said,
Sure.
there could be childhood factors. But here's what I would say, and I'm going to do it in the context of something very personal to me. One of the phrases that I've been really fixated on for the last couple of years is, what is a man of depth? And what I've come to is a man of depth is somebody that can hold the pain of life and still stay present with themselves and stay present with others without reacting, numbing out, withdrawing, defending, or attacking back. And for me, a personal example is in my somewhat recent past, I went through a breakup of a long relationship, and it was very hard. And I suffered for a while because I was going into blame, all the things that she had done wrong to create this situation. And it was painful because I never got out of that spin cycle by just staying in the blame. And so I went through a very long process of really saying, how can I actually feel what's the painful here? And it was just painful because it was a relationship that was ending that was very meaningful to me. So the more that I can take that pain in and welcome it in and say, yeah, this relationship is actually ending, and just hold that and stay present with the world and just hold the pain of that without having to do anything about it. And I think that's the key. Can you hold pain without actually having to do anything about it? Because men traditionally or typically want pain or emotional discomfort to end. Women feel a little more comfortable with it, but we want it to end. So we want to resolve it. We want to fix it. And pretty much every guy, I think, falls prey to that. But if you can just hold it and accept it and be like, yeah, this is really happening, and then be present as you're sharing that with other people or even just yourself, that's when you become a man of depth. And so when you allow pain instead of trying to push it away or resolve it, I think that opens the door to most men. They've given themselves permission to feel it because it's not so damn scary anymore once you've worked on that. Now, this is not a mental choice you make. It actually took me a couple years of meditation practice to really create that level of depth and acceptance of pain, the world's pain. And it's a long road, but you can do it with the right coaching. So for me, it's about becoming a man of depth, welcoming in the pain and accepting that it's part of life rather than trying to end it or push it away. That's the first step. And I think that's the quest every man should be on.
It seems to me that there's an evolved masculine energy here that allows us to have much more patience and much better timing in terms of how we're going to respond to any particular stimulus that would somehow set our masculinity into action. And lest that sound esoteric, there's a time and a place to sit and cry with others. And there's another time and place where it's time to get down to business and fix something that's broken. But when it's as if the only tool we have in the kit is a hammer and everything starts looking like a nail, that we still aren't as mature and evolved as we should be in our masculine emotionality or in our emotional masculinity. So I really thank you for that insight. I think that's very valuable, and that may be the big takeaway for a lot of these guys from this entire podcast.
Yeah, I hope so.
The name of the book is The Masculine in Relationship, a blueprint for inspiring the trust, lust, and devotion of a strong woman. The author's name is GS Youngblood, and you guys can go grab a copy. And conveniently enough, I've made it so there are two ways that you can grab Mr. Youngblood's book. The first way is by going to the Amazon influencer page at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon, where he'll be right there at the top of the queue. And you can also grab books from other guests who have been author types on the Mountaintop Podcast as well when you go there. Or you can go directly to Amazon.com and get you some by going to mountaintoppodcast.com, Youngblood. Youngblood. And the book is excellent. And I will say, just going through the table of contents, GS and I are in very strong agreement on just about everything when it comes to being a masculine man and the way women define it. As a matter of fact, it was an interesting conversation I had with him the first time around, trying to figure out what topic to do on this show, because everything he talks about is so overarching around here that we had to really dig deep. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'm very grateful for guys like you, GS, out there who are really digging into how to be a good, strong, mature man of character. And this entire audience of guys listening are better off because of it. So thank you for being here today and for sharing from the heart.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come on, and I really appreciate what you're putting out in the world too. So kudos.
Yeah, man, it's all about purpose, which I'm sure you're all about as well.
Yeah.
And guys, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com just yet, there are a myriad of reasons to go there now. You can get show notes. You can see what our guests look like. You can download a free special report on how to solve sticking points in your life with women, whether you're still single for now or in a relationship. And you can also get in on my newsletter, which comes to you every day. It's fluff free, and you will get something guaranteed that you can use to be a better man or get better with women. And above all, listen, guys, the world is a crazy place right now. I've heard more than half a dozen people over the course of the last week saying, man, I'd just love to kick the year 2020 to the curb. I'm done with this whole year. I mean, when will it end? And we're not even half done yet at the time this is being produced. So listen, guys, you don't have to go it alone. This may be the best time ever to get a coach in your corner. And if you resonate with what is talked about in this show, the ideas, the focus on being a good man of character and being the right man in the right woman's life, give me a call. Let's get on the phone for 25 minutes and talk about where you are right now and where you'd like to be. The way to do that is to go to mountaintoppodcast.com, click on the red button in the upper right-hand corner, and get on my schedule for 25 minutes for free. And that will be a call you'll be very glad you made. I also love talking to you guys. It keeps my finger on the pulse of what's going on out there and helps me make the show better for you. It's all there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.